93.9 The Beat, Hawaii's #1 for hip-hop is Romeo Valentine. We're an iHeartRadio station, and right now inside the Hawaiian Financial Music Hall, the iHeartRadio Music Hall, we got a lot of special guests over here because there's a big project that just went down, filmed here on the islands, called Growing Up Local. New film, James Sereno. He is the director, the man behind it all. You go ahead. We want you to introduce yourself and some of the crew that you brought with you as
Okay, cool. Hey, thank you, Romeo, for having us here. I'm James. I directed and produced and worked on the film. And I have Taimane here, who did the musical score and the music. I have Natalie here, who played one of the characters, Miss Chun. I have Makoa's on this side. Sorry, I have Makoa here, who played the lead character, Stanley. And I have Thiessen here, who played Kavika, his best friend.
Wow, okay. So you brought the whole crew, and Taimane, very, very popular here, especially on the islands. I've seen her play multiple times. She's killing it. So, I mean, that's awesome that you got her on the music portion. And tell me about the crew. Where did the crew resonate from?
I mean, basically, everybody who worked on this was part of our, I make local TV commercials here in Hawaii. We've been doing it for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And it really was our local crew. And it was very important that everybody is local who worked behind the scenes. The entire cast is also local. And, Taimane, the music was also local. So it was just very important that we made this story that came from a local perspective.
Yeah, what was the inspiration behind you wanting to put this one together? Because I mean, that's a bold line. And when I hear growing up local, I just think of all the memories. I grew up in Makiki.
Yeah.
I grew up in town. I think of all the memories. And I know in your film you go from Waimanalo to Pololo.
Yeah, exactly. So it actually, going back in time 20 years ago, I actually read a short story that was part of Bamboo Ridge Press, and it was written by this author, Stuart Ching. And it was a short story called Way Back to Pololo. And the original short was set in Pololo, and it had the kids and the friends, and they were fighting, and everything about it I just loved. So I optioned it, and we actually made a screenplay, and that was about 20 years ago. And for whatever reason, it just didn't happen. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I sort of picked up the script again and took a look at it and realized, there's something there. And I felt like the time was right to make that as the next project. So that's kind of what we did.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. Well, I was just going to say you're a great director. I've worked with you before. I'm on my first commercial. Yep. He was the director, so that's why it's exciting to see you doing something like this and another thing like this. So excited for the film. So you got Taimane right here. And what was your inspiration, and how did you have to get ready to do the music for this movie?
Well, I really connected with this movie because there's a lot of, it's a coming of age story, but from a local perspective. And so I'm born and raised from Aina Haina. So I've been playing ukulele, but how can I connect with this movie with a Hawaiian instrument, but make it fresh and new. And so I actually did a very famous song here in the islands, Waimanalo Blues by Country Comfort. I'm really excited for people to hear this one because it's going to be different than what you expect. It's actually in a minor key, which gives it like a haunting feel, which really speaks about the movie in a special way.
Wow. So wow, that's awesome. And
if I can also add that my last movie, Taimane worked on it, and she was really the first person that I called as I was making this, because I felt like it needed that voice that she brings to everything. And I was super honored when she agreed to work on it, because I knew that, a lot of people, you look at a film and you think that it's all imagery and pictures, but the sound and the music and what that brought to it was really critical. And I knew that what she would do on it to give it the soul and the depth that we needed to make it local, but make it really emotional, that's what she would do. So I was really happy when she said yes, that she would do it, and I felt very relieved.
What would you have done if she said no?
I would have begged.
Real quick, I just wanted to add that a huge mahalo to James Sereno for also believing in me. I'm known as a performer, and so this is something new and a different way to create music. So, this is something new for me, and we work really well together, and it has a great emotional vibe, especially with the boys behind us too.
So she couldn't say no then. With that being said, You knew she would have said yes. You would have been like, hey, I got this project. But it's like James calling you. It's like, all right, let's do it.
Very fortunate. Yeah, very fortunate to have her as part of this.
Awesome.
Yeah, and she just is coming off her wins for, I think you won 3 Nahokus just this past weekend, right? So congratulations.
Had to make room on the shelf when she got home. She said,
so super great.
wow, congratulations. That's awesome. So, if I had this question: if you had a unusual musical instrument that you had to use to make any in this movie, I mean, what is an unusual instrument that you would use?
That's a really good question. I love the sound of the cello because it's really emotional, brings that classical cinematic vibe. And I don't think most people have heard ukulele with cello together.
Yeah.
So it's just a great pairing. And I would say the cello.
So
I didn't play the cello. I wish I could, but no, I haven't.
Do you know how to play the cello?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I've tried. It's very hard.
YouTube University. Or Waimanalo High School. Right here with the shirt, the Waimanalo High School shirt. Yeah. Okay, so James, if you can name a fragrance for this movie,
Fragrance.
what would you say this movie, you can name it or give it a smell?
God. I don't know if I could. I might turn to one of my actors here. And
What
go,
would you guys
anybody
think?
have a fragrance? Natalie, Makoa, Thiessen, fragrance?
They were on the set. They were probably smelling something.
For me personally, the fragrance kind of just has like I don't know, like if you've been in like Kalihi area.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of smell. Of just like a lot of...
Describe the Kalihi smell.
the Kalihi smell, I don't know. It's hard. It's just like... I don't know how to explain it. It's like a aggressive smell to it with a, I don't know. I don't know how to explain the smell.
It's alive.
It's alive, yeah.
Vibrant.
Yeah, okay.
Vibrant.
All right, so fellas, since we're on you guys in the back, can you guys tell us a hilarious moment that you guys had on the set? I mean, something that...
Funny moment. Why are you giving it to me? One that off the top of my head, there was a scene we were shooting, and it's something for me I've never really experienced ever before, and I think none of us ever. But there was this prop that we're using, and it was very loud. And when we were preparing for it, they're just like, "Oh, it's gonna be loud," and so we're like, "Okay." But then once we actually shot it, and it was like live, when we all experienced it, we all kind of like freaked out, and one of the actors that was doing it, he kind of like ran away from it, and like the way he ran, I don't know. I found
like a big roach was flying at him.
It was like a big roach flying away from a big sound. It was freaking hilarious. That would be a moment for me.
That's funny. That's funny. When you see big people run from small things too.
Yeah.
Because you guys. I mean, you might not see it on camera. These guys are huge. These guys are huge behind them. I mean, they look like they own 24 Hour Fitness. So, hey, appreciate you guys for answering that. What would you say if you had a special talent? What would it be? If Kavika had a special talent.
Kavika had a special
Yes, the character in the film.
I think he has a special talent of getting into trouble. He really knows how to find his way into some sort of like trouble, and just finding some sort of like issues with a bunch of people, and it's just that's his specialty. That's his special ability.
What was the biggest piece of trouble you ever got into?
As Kavika or as for myself?
As for yourself.
I think that's funny that I'm playing Kavika, because for me personally, I'm actually a really big pacifist, and I stay away from all the trouble as much as I can. So I've never really gotten into any kind of trouble. I guess the worst you could say is I stole an eraser from a friend in like 3rd grade.
That's it. That's all you did.
Yeah. And I will say, to kind of interject, this is the second movie that I did with Thiessen. He did my previous movie, which Taimane actually did the music for as well. And when he did that, he plays this other character. He was 13, named Kai. And Thiessen is a super sweet, super kind, super polite guy. Yeah. And Kai and Kavika, who he's playing, are opposite of that. And so we did a lot for him to get there, and he's a great actor.
Yeah.
But he would be the character, and I would just go, he was, and then we would cut, and then he would be, is that okay? So it was really great to see. And I think the thing that's interesting about the two boys' friendship. You know, this story follows Stanley, who grows. They grow up in Waimanalo, and Stanley and Kavika, Makoa and Thiessen, they're best friends. And Thiessen is the kind of local guy who believes that he'll give his shirt for you. He'll die for his friends. He believes in loyalty and friendship. And they all grew up together and they're all tight, right? So he's a tough guy who is willing to do whatever it takes for his friends, no matter what it is, right? And I think that's kind of what represents who he is. And Makoa, who plays Stanley is a character who is caught between his loyalty to his friends, their ability, I think, to get into trouble, and his ambitions to become who he could be.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the story is really about. It's about friendship and loyalty and family and the choices you have to make to decide your destiny. And I think the great thing about it, and you know, maybe I can have Natalie talk about it a little bit, is the local vibe that it has. Because growing up here in Hawaii, it's very different, you know. And I think that we wanted to tell this story about who we are and how we relate, because family, friendship, loyalty, relationships, it's just different. You know, that's all I can say. And everyone who grew up here can understand that vibe, and we wanted to represent that vibe in the movie. So.
Yeah. Stanley. Then, since you're on Stanley, Makoa, who plays Stanley, the main character. Tell us, you know, how was it for you preparing for this role? James got you set. It sounds like.
Oh yeah. The funny thing is, talking with James, we didn't really do much preparing. I'm a first-time actor. This is my debut, and so I didn't really show up to set really in character. I just kind of showed up as myself, and then reacted how I think I would have reacted. And then towards the end, after we were done filming and everything, James gave his old big speech to everybody, talking to each and every one of the actors about how they worked and everything. And then he saved me for last, and then said, Makoa, I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't really talk to you for the past like month and a half. I was like, no, James, I noticed. And he was like, and that's because I just needed you to be yourself. And so that's how I tried to play the character.
Wow. So he didn't talk to you for a whole month and a half.
Well, I mean, we talked a little, but you know, Makoa to me brought this authentic person of who he was. So it was sort of interesting where I think Thiessen was the opposite, right? Who he was and his character was different. But to me, Makoa was just comfortable in his skin, comfortable with who he was, and that's why I picked him. And to me, the most important thing is I didn't want to over-direct him or tell him too much to make him think too much. So I just told him to trust his instinct, which is what he did, and to trust himself.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, by telling him less, I think that allowed him to have the freedom to find his Stanley.
Yeah.
You know, and I think they all found their own characters, but I wanted Makoa to find his Stanley, which he did. Yeah. And I thought that was great. So I told him at the end.
Yeah. You told him at the end. Oh, I see. So he was trying to pull it out of you the whole time, without you really knowing. That's awesome. If Stanley had a catchphrase in the movie, what would it be?
What did he say on
well, we go scrap.
Yeah, come on, bro, give him.
I seen that in the trailer.
Yeah.
Give him.
That was ad-libbed.
That was ad-libbed?
Yeah, that was my writing, not James.
Yeah, that was his writing.
What?
Exactly.
Oh, and look at that. Made it to the trailer. That's give them. You guys got to make the next shirt. Give them.
Yeah,
Come on,
that's a good
Bob.
idea.
Give them.
Yeah, I like that.
Awesome. So you got Natalie, who plays Mrs. Chun, right over there. Tell us about your role in the movie.
Yeah. So, you know, when I initially read the script, I immediately knew this was something really special. Yeah, because when you think about Hawaii, especially like Hollywood, right, it depicts us as this paradise, which it is, but it also depicts its people as this just, you know, happy, no problems, constant vacation.
Yep.
When in reality, we have these very, very real struggles in our community. And I think this story in particular hits on that intergenerational struggles, right? The conflicts, the love, the failures, the triumphs. And it's in a way that I haven't ever seen before. Wow. So it's just authentic. You know, it's our stories deserve to be told and they need to be told.
Yeah.
And I think this movie does that.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, with a lot of things, a lot of people have a perspective of Hawaii and what it's like to grow up here. But unless you really grew up here, you don't know about, going to the park and fighting every weekend, weekday, not weekend.
And I think, we've made several movies before this, and I always talk about this inside out point of view. And we've made some movies that we use Hawaii as place, and we have characters in it that are local, but also trying to connect with an outside world. And I think all the things that are made, I think all the TV shows that are made in Hawaii and depict Hawaii, they're all great.
Yeah.
But I would call that an outside-in point of view, or it's an outsider's point of view on what everybody outside thinks of Hawaii. Yeah. And all of us who live there know that that's not the Hawaii we live in. And I just wanted all of us, and that's why it was important for it to be local cast and crew, to make a story that was authentic to who we are, how we grew up, how we live, how we make decisions, how we make certain choices, right? And how we relate to each other, which is only unique to us.
Yeah.
And that to me was the most important thing. And it's that self-reflection to see ourselves on screen as authentic as we could. And the only way to do that was to have it written local, to have it produced local, to have it made like that. And, even so much so that as we're putting this out into theaters in August, there's no interference, it's just us purely trying to get this out to the public, and it was really made for the community here to hopefully see themselves in some of this. So.
Yeah, and speaking of in the theaters, I mean, that's huge. Getting a film in the theaters can't be an easy task. So, I mean, tell us. I mean, how excited are you to, you're in ward theaters too?
Yeah, the movie will premiere August 4th at the Consolidated Ward and Pro Ridge. I'm super grateful for them. We're a small local indie movie. Consolidated has a big mainland company in New York. We had to work with them. We were very fortunate because several of my other movies in the past have played at Ward or played at Consolidated. And so we had a little bit of a built-in relationship there, and we're able at least to get the dialogue started.
Yeah.
And super grateful that they believed in what we shared with them and believed in what we were making. And so, I mean, I couldn't be more thankful for them allowing us the opportunity to share it with the public, and that's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
And we're super excited to have it be released when it is.
Man, congratulations. That's huge. I mean, I can't imagine, especially you guys are probably like, we're about to be on the big screen, my music, it's about to be, what? So.
And if I could just share a small little funny story where you were talking to Natalie about being Mrs. Chun, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, this movie began 20 years ago. Well, right now she plays the teacher who is the influence on Stanley in his life. She's the teacher at the high school, and we made this Waimanalo High. So they all go to Waimanalo High, which is kind of a fun, playful thing in the story. But 20 years ago, when we were going to make the movie, Natalie was actually part of the movie, but she actually was set to play Stanley's girlfriend, Eva, and she was back then, 20 years ago, in that range. So she was actually going to be in the original version as Eva. And then in serendipity, as we were planning this and casting this, and we have all had life experiences, and I've known Natalie, and like you, she's been in commercials with me and done a lot of projects together and some film projects as well other than that. But when we got here 20 years later, I remembered her and love who she is and what she does. And I thought Miss Chun might be right for her. And in serendipity, she was, because of kind of your life today, right? And her father grew up in Waimanalo, which I actually didn't know at the time. And she shared a lot of those truths, authenticities of her life, right? That was in the story.
What is some things? What was it like growing up in Waimanalo? I mean,
so my dad grew up in Waimanalo. Yeah, so it's so funny that James brought that up because I actually went away for residency in New York, and then I came back home. I was working for a job that didn't allow acting, so I didn't act. And then I just started acting again. And my first audition was for Growing Up Local. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's doing it like 20 years later. And so I auditioned, thinking I wasn't sure. And, he got back to me and I got it. And then I think a few weeks later, so I wasn't pregnant at the time of audition. And at the time I got the role. But a few weeks later, I found out I was pregnant, and so it was a mix of emotion. Thank you so much. He just made one last week. Yeah. But I was like, I'm probably not gonna be able to make the movie because I'm gonna be 8 months pregnant, and this is Mrs. Chun's not pregnant. But James, being the amazing director that he is, he sat down and talked with me, and he was like, how can we use this pregnancy to make Mrs. Chun's character even more relatable and real and dynamic? Yep. And we did. And I think it actually helped me, at least being Mrs. Chun, thinking like, I have my own history, real and fake, right? With Mrs. Chun, of my dad being from Waimanalo and growing up in a really rough neighborhood, and me having the opportunity to go away and be educated on the mainland and bring those skills back to Hawaii. And that's what Mrs. Chun does. And being pregnant, that maternity instinct goes in, and she sees Stanley and she sees this raw talent, and she's like, I want to nurture him and I want to help him pave this road. And so thank you for giving me that opportunity, James, and believing in me at 8 months pregnant.
That's a really cool story.
Yeah, I mean, it really, at first when we picked her and she said, I just want to let you know I'm pregnant, I went, oh. And I thought, okay, how do we make that work? And I had to kind of step back. And then as I thought about it, I think it was the next morning, I thought about it and I said, this story really is about family.
Yeah.
It's about fathers and sons. It's about mothers and daughters. It's about brothers and sisters. It's about ohana. And I thought, wow, that's actually kind of great that she is pregnant, Miss Chun, and that she is going to have her first child, and what the story was, and how that related. And I will say another aspect of the story is we follow, so the story actually takes place in the early 90s, so it's not today. We follow this group of friends in Waimanalo, these boys who are going to Waimanalo High, seniors in high school. But the story actually follows two stories. It follows the boys today, but it also follows Stanley's grandfather. And we follow his story from the 40s, and it eventually connects to today. And we see the choices that his grandfather made growing up, working in the plantations, all the stuff that growing up in Hawaii has, fighting in the war, and how those choices actually affect Stanley's life today. So it actually goes back and forth between all of that. And the central person in that is Stanley's father, Henry, who in one story is a father to his son, Stanley, but in the backstory is a son to the grandfather, if that makes sense. Yeah. So this father character who is a son in one and has to learn the lessons, and in the Stanley story, he's a father trying to teach it, and there's a little disconnect there, right? And that's what happens in life, and we all are trying to learn lessons from the past to teach our future, and that's kind of part of what the story is about, so.
Did this while filming this movie, did it bring up any memories of growing up here in Hawaii for anybody?
Yeah, so Stanley with his father, they butt heads all the time, and I'm sure most people can relate, but my dad and I, we were always butting heads, but we've become really close. Just the other day, we actually went to go get some forms signed, and then you
guys went to get what is that?
We went to get some forms signed.
Form sign?
Yeah, and then...
I thought you said farmicide. I was like, what's a farmicide?
No, sorry.
You would have got farmicide? What is that?
Yeah, no. And so we're just signing forms in this meeting, and he takes out his phone and then shows the lady across from us, like, I got to show you something, and it shows the trailer. And then after the trailer plays, he says, like, you know why you're so good? Because I didn't teach him that. Funny practice. That's what
parents do. They take credit for everything, right? Yes. They take credit. They're like, they didn't send you to the class. You just showed up on your own, and they take credit. That's so funny. How about Mrs. Chun? I was going to ask you this question: if you had a cooking show, if Mrs. Chun had a cooking show, what would be the number one dish on her menu?
You gotta go Ono Grinds, traditional Hawaiian food. Just had a luau last week, so that's my fave.
What would be on that plate?
Ooh, we got some kalua pig, got some lau lau, some haupia for the sweet tooth, all the good stuff.
Did you guys have any of that food on set?
Yeah, we actually we did. We had we had catering from different people. Actually, Zippy's, who's one of relationship with them. We had a lot of Zippy's food on there, and we had a Japanese catering food, and we had just a different mix. So it was always different. Yeah, and we kept it very local grinds. Yeah.
Wow. What would you guys say is the best part about this film? I mean, what are you guys most excited to see? Are you excited to see the reaction of people, or maybe seeing yourselves on the big screen?
Just real quick, since I did James's other film before, what I noticed for me, a difference was seeing it on a small laptop, and you just got so used to seeing it in that way. And then when I went to, the theater and seeing it on an actual screen, I noticed how people reacted. So the audience and hearing what they connect with is a really cool experience.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that.
Seeing like the final product, right? Seeing the final product and seeing everybody there, because looking at something, especially when you're editing it, you lose your reaction thoughts, I guess. What would you guys say was the hardest part about getting in character or being a part of this film? What would you guys say the biggest challenge was thus far?
Well, for me, and as we've mentioned before, I consider myself a big soft teddy bear. So switching from Kavika,
I was gonna hire you for security, man. You're telling me no.
Nah, but switching from Thiessen to Kavika was really not mentally straining, but it was rough because like some days like I would wake up and certain scenes it's really more of like the true Kavika and that aggression and just like always like angry all the time, and I'm never angry. So trying to switch from that was always like, it took me some time, but kind of like after a while, like you kind of get used to it, but it's still like I still can never ever really be that kind of person. So that was probably the hardest thing for me, is just trying to switch from Thiessen, like the nice loving guy who's like doesn't want to hurt a fly, to the guy who's always trying to pick fights with everybody and just wants to like punch everybody out. And so that's probably my hardest.
I mean, I seen you walking earlier. I was like, this guy wants to beat me up. I was like, this is the guy. This is where my life just shines before my
But what I did want to add for Thiessen, if I can, is part of why I picked him is that duality. So you have this character, Thiessen, who's really, Kavika, that Thiessen plays, who's really just this fire.
Yeah.
He lives with fire, he lives with anger, and he reacts. Mm-hmm. But he's also very gentle.
Yeah.
And you will see in the movie, and that's part of who Thiessen is too. He's kind of childlike at points. He loves his friends. He bonds with his friends. The stories, the antics they play, they're very close and personal. And so he is part firecracker, but like he says, he's also part butterfly. And it is those kind of guys you find that are the most angry and the most fuel-driven, that are actually the most true and the most heartfelt. And it's because it's coming from their heart, because they're so soulful. And I think that's who Thiessen was in it. So that duality, which I appreciate was hard for him, comes off on screen, because you don't want this character to be a doo-doo head and you don't like him, and you want to care for him and understand that he's just fighting for what he believes in, his friends and this journey, and he just is very passionate about it, and it comes out like that, which I know a lot of local guys who are like that, and that's just what he represents, but he loves and cares for them deeply. So
was the fighting scene hard at all? I seen there was some blows being thrown.
Some blows being taken too. I was getting tossed around during some of them. I think I got kicked in the head one time. Yeah.
So you didn't have any stunt doubles?
No, I do all my own stunts. Tom Cruise.
Yeah, we were really, really fortunate, because what happened was, so one of my good friends who's worked on several of my movies, this guy Darren Fujimori, and I met him because I did the HIF, the Hawaii International Film Festival, years ago, and he helped me do stunts. He's a local stunt man. He's a good friend, and he's helped every movie that I do. He's helped me do it. And when we were thinking of this movie, I actually had to think of someone to play the grandfather. And the grandfather is Japanese, begins, in the plantations. And I thought of Darren. And Darren, again, it's similar to Makoa. I called him and said, I got the script. Yeah. Can you read it? I want you to play the grandfather. And when we see the grandfather, he's younger, right? In the story, he gets older. And Darren said, why you thought of me? And I said, just read the story, because he's this tough, strong guy, but he's also has a lot of heart.
Yeah.
With just Darren. And so he agreed to do it. So I kind of got a 2-for-1 because he was our stunt coordinator, but he was also the grandfather. But what was great was he was on set acting for his parts, but he was also on set to help the boys and instruct them. And he's done Hawaii Five-0 and all the big shows. And he came on this, and they did it for a limited budget to help teach them how to fight and how to throw punches. But he was able to watch what they did and help inform him when he acted, right? So it was kind of a dual thing. So yeah, it was, they did great, but on the stunts.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I watch stunt video, like people learning to do stunts, and I watch it on, I'm like, this is kind of hard, like, you got to flip, and I was like, how do they know when to turn? But I mean, so I mean, I guess that's the best way to save money, and I'm just joking.
It worked out, though.
That's what growing up local is about, right? You find a way to save $1 or $2 or 10. All right, so anything else you guys want to leave us with?
I just think, everyone's kind of sharing their stories, and James, he like saw something in each one of us, and he was able to give us this creative opening to make these characters our own. And even, with Thiessen having to, it's not like him, but you still use, like you said, that peaceful side of you to make Kavika so much more than he would have been otherwise. And I think the thing I'm most excited about is just seeing these stories, right? And letting other people see these stories, because we really did come to it from a place of authenticity. This is us playing these characters, but it's us. It's our stories. It's our family stories. And so just super grateful to be a part of this.
So to that, I've posted the trailer to a bunch of things like TikTok, all that stuff. And a lot of people that are seeing it, people I've never met, but they see the trailer and they're like, oh, wow. Like, they're excited to watch it because they've grown up in Nalo. Yeah. And so they're like, oh, I really want to see, like, they're excited that other people can see how it was for them to live in Nalo and grow up in Nalo. And I think a lot of people are actually excited that they're hoping if one day it'll go to, like, mainland and all that stuff, that people in the mainland can see how it is for us, like how we said in the beginning, like, growing up local it's different than the mainland. And I have a lot of mainland friends, and they understand that like certain things that we do, they've never heard of, they've never even thought of. So like a lot of stuff in the movie, I'm really excited to see how people will react to it, because that stuff is just true to who we are, especially for me as a Hawaiian. So that's just really like, I'm really excited to see how people are going to react to that.
Yeah, I think that's super cool, because I mean, a lot of it seems like a lot of Hawaii is now becoming out. It's like pouring out into, you got EM winning American Idol to, you got the fighters like Max and all these guys that are just, just incredible. And now you got the slap competition, and it's all like Hawaii people that are just topping it, and a lot of people are also seeking Hawaii for the football players and all kinds of stuff, so it's like to see, like, I think there's a hunger, there's a thirst to see what it really is, what Hawaii really is. Because I mean, before, I guess growing up for me was what was the movie with Mark Thompson? Oh man, Beyond Paradise. Yes, that was like, for me, that was the movie growing up. And this, when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, this kind of makes me feel like, like there was really no authentic movie back in, I don't think there ever has been that really portrayed like Hawaii, Yeah,
Daryl actually has a role in the movie.
Yeah, I seen that. He's part of the cast.
Yeah, and so I was lucky enough. I saw him. I was like, this guy looks so familiar. I was like, are you the Mark Thompson guy? He's like, yeah, I am. I was like, can we recreate that real fast? And so we were able to recreate that post.
What?
And so when that was originally first posted, people thought we were making like a Beyond Paradise sequel or remake or something. We had to keep quiet about it. We couldn't say what we were actually doing.
Yeah. But I mean, it's totally, you weren't trying, you're not, it's totally different than Beyond Paradise. But growing up, that was, like, just talking about growing up local, it makes you just think of all the things you did growing up. And that was one of the movies growing up. So that's pretty dope that you got him, that Daryl is in this film, because I was looking, I was like, oh shoot, he's from the, before I even seen that he was in it, I was thinking that, and then I seen that, I was like, holy smokes, that's my bank.
And what's funny about Darryl is, again, it's the same thing, kind of like me and you.
Yeah.
He and I think he was saying that his first commercial he did was
Was with you?
With me, yeah.
Really?
So the first one he did many years ago,
Yeah.
where it was a interesting role he had. That's as much as I'll say. And he and I have done several commercials together, but I never got him in a movie. And I kept wanting to work with him because really so talented. And he's
Yeah.
super funny, right?
Yeah.
I didn't tap his funny side. So when this one character, he actually plays Thiessen's father, right? So he plays Kavika's dad. And he's gone through some traumatic war problems. And so he's dealing with that. And it's tough because Kavika has to actually be a father to his dad, right? He has to help take care of his dad because his dad is having some struggles.
Yeah.
But I thought of Darryl and I thought, man, I would love to work with him. And again, there were so many great actors in this, and he was one of them. And I just asked him, would you do it? It's not a huge part. It's not big, but it was a very important role, and he agreed to do it. So I'm just very fortunate because there are so many talented people here, cast and crew, musically,
Yeah.
acting, professionally talent, editing, cinematography, all of those things. And I just wanted all of us to have an opportunity to make this. And I would say that, you know, this is just one sliver of growing up local. We're not saying that this is the end all or be all. There are many different local Hawaii stories that can be told and should be told. And we specifically didn't try to make this movie to reach anybody other than us, and just being honest, to be true to ourselves and give that voice as much authenticity that makes sense to us. And then we hope that within that resonates beyond, right? Yeah. And that we're not trying to make this for an audience. We're just trying to tell an authentic story of who we are and how we live and how we grew up. And we hope people here come to see it. And if it resonates farther, that's great. But it really was doing everything that we can just to tell a truthful story.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. This has been awesome. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
And then just real quick, if you come to the premiere, which is August 4th, 5th, and 6th, the cast will be there and we can answer your questions if you have. So, yeah.
Questions, pictures, autographs, because they're gonna be like, oh man, I loved you in this. You know,
War Theater,
yeah,
Pro-Age.
You think now, like, you know, even the kids these days, right now, like what I was maybe, I don't know how old I was. I might have been elementary when the other movie came out. Now look at the kids that'll be in elementary. They're going to come 20 years later and be like, hey, this is what I grew up on, growing up local, this movie right here, you know? That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. It's been a blast hanging out with you guys. Good luck on everything. This has been great. James, thank you for stopping by with the crew, Taimane and the cast. Enjoy the movie. It's coming out in theaters. That's awesome. Congratulations on everything, and can't wait to see it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up right here, the cast and the crew growing up local, right here on iHeartRadio 93.9 The Beat.